Right, appears to be live. Do the usual quick test. And then we'll be proceeding with the proceedings. There we go. So, ready to proceed. So anyway, this whatever scuzoid is it's probably mindless marbles. Back again. Just you can sort of see the habit is the same. I'll argue some more of this crap because it's sort of important. I don't know what his argument ultimately is here. Does he actually think that the further away you go from an object gravitationally, that because Einstein got rid of the R squared rule, that somehow there's more bending the further away from the sun you get? What's his logic here? That if I shoot a photon as far away as I can get from a galaxy, that the photon will actually spiral into the galaxy or something? What's his insane point? Clearly, the argument's made that by Newton's mechanics, there's no way you're going to see any solar lensing, and even the galactic lensing. Well, it's nonsensical. Even with Einstein's gimmick, it still doesn't make any sense. But anyway, because the lensing is happening way too far away from any gravitational strength. Gravity's just way too weak, way too far away. Anyway, so I shouldn't have to go over and over this. So let's just do the website, and we'll just make sure it's understood. So they derive an equation. So there's two equations. The first equation is the one that has the R squared in it, when you're just measuring the force of gravity and the way it diminishes with distance. And that's where the inverse square law comes in. And it comes in because of the light bulb rule, because the object producing the gravity in most circumstances, in all the circumstances that anybody really deals with, is always spherically symmetrical. That is, it's got as much mass this way as it has this way. And that's essentially what the inverse square law is. It's the fact that the force is spread this way and this way. Okay. And that's what accounts for the R squared. That means as you go further away, the lines are diverging this way, and they're also diverging this way. So if a photon was likely to hit you, you have to think about it in terms of, well, now it's moving this way, and it's moving this way. So now you're less likely to get hit because it's moving this way, and you're less likely to get hit because it's also moving away this way. So it's diverging from your center in both of those directions. That's the squared part. All right, if that helps. Now, from that equation, they go through this little bit of a process where from that equation, you derive the equation for orbits. Okay, so this is essentially describing something encountering a sun or a mass, and the equation for how much it might cause an orbit or it might not cause an orbit, depends. It obviously can't really create an orbit unless it actually hits something to slow it down. It has to slow down somehow, or it will just leave. But anyway, we'll get to that. Well, I don't think we have to get to that. People should be able to understand that. Like for example, if they use a satellite or something, they have to always use a little bit of fuel to retard the progress of its change, the direction of the satellite, or the satellite will never get into an orbit. All right. So all they're doing is you take the original equation way up here with the R squared in it. Okay, so you have ma equals gm, and then you have mass over R squared. The masses cancel out because they're irrelevant. The mass of the test particle is irrelevant. And that derives down to 2 GM. Okay, so we'll get to the 2 part for all stuff. And so this is the equation that's still used. So the angle of deflection will equal 2 times the gravitational constant times the weather, which is also irrelevant, times the mass of the big object, the sun, times the distance from the center of the sun, times the speed of the object's velocity squared, and in this case, c squared. And that's the formula for understanding the ellipse that you'll create if you were to create an orbit. That works for everything now. That hasn't changed. For every physical thing I can shoot at a sun, this formula is the accurate formula. The only time, okay, the Einstein formula with the 4 is used, and that's a derivative of eliminating the r squared. So just having r in the equation derives to an equation that says it's 4 GM. So where's the 4 here? Where is it? Let's see. It should be right here. Well, everybody should know this, that the Einstein difference is merely putting the 4 in. So it'll be shown in mindless marbles as nonsense. Where is the 4? So there it is, 4 GM. So B equals 4 GM, okay? And then RC squared, and R is the radius times the velocity squared. So they do the number here, and that's when you get 1.75 arc seconds. Now, there's so many things that can keep pointing out all the things that are wrong with this nonsense. These numbers are for the surface of the sun. Okay, so this number 1.75 arc seconds is how much deflection there is if you go right across the surface of the sun, one radius from the center of the sun. Eddington couldn't see any stars on the surface of the sun. It's impossible. He has to go outside the corona. So he was at least a half a radius further away from the sun, at least. And to do, in my opinion, if you've seen any pictures of solar eclipses, you know, the corona is huge, huge. Okay, so if you really want to be safe, you'd have to be 2 radiuses from the center of the sun to be safe, which cuts that number in half, right? So we're back to 0.85 again, which is ironic as hell, and is a number they can't detect. It's too small. So just understand, the 4 GM is just another way of saying I took the square off the R. That's what the 4 means. If it says 2 GM, that's the same as having the square on the R. So you're increasing the size of the denominator versus the numerator, okay? And so as you make the bottom number bigger, you make the top number needs to be larger, kind of thing. And that's all this is really about. So obviously, as you increase the 4 number, that's the same. If I make that 4 number bigger, that's the same as making the R squared number smaller, because that's the bottom number, the divided into number. So you can sort of understand that 4 GM would essentially be the same as getting rid of the R squared. And that's how it was derived. So when I say Einstein just erased the square off the R, that's what he did. For photons only. Nothing else in the universe. Just for photons. All right. So, premise done. Now let's read his slop. 620. So even though the line might be twice as long, so now we're going with this, well, whatever, it doesn't matter. It is still 4 times less photons. So I was sort of just talking if the inverse square law. Obviously, I don't believe in Einstein's, let's just change the 2 into a 4. I don't believe that's anything like legitimate mathematics. So I don't think erasing the R squared, the square on the R, just for photons has any legitimacy whatsoever. So obviously I was talking in terms of the inverse square law still being a reality. Even though you're in it longer, it wouldn't matter because it's 4 times less, dummy. So it doesn't matter. It's still 2 times more, less gravity. So it's still twice as less, even by Einstein's number. The difference is a 2 versus a 4. You can sort of understand that that's a half multiple, which means it's half as much. 4 times versus 2 times. That's a doubling. Okay, so it's that simple. So twice the distance, half as much gravity. So the statement is still perfectly reasonable. Then he does this bro thing. Fuck you. Okay, do you even know how logic works? Apparently you don't, and that's clear. Twice as long equals multiplied by 2. Obviously, I was still talking about the inverse square law, quite obviously. 4 times less gravity equals divide by 4. I'll just say it again. It's quite obviously what I was referencing. The point is there's less gravity the further away you go, and there's less bending the further away you go. Not more bending. That's just a fact. Okay, you just refuted your own argument. No, I didn't do any such thing. In your own goddamn quote. No, I didn't. Do you know what happens when you multiply 1/4 times 2? I didn't do that, idiot. Okay, so I don't have that problem. 2, fucking stupid. So again, I've demonstrated, I mean, just a totally meaningless comment. Refutes absolutely nothing. Doesn't refute the fact that there's half as much gravity affecting an object that's twice as far away by their own mathematics. And again, by their own mathematics, this stupid deflection number is for the surface of the sun. You know, by the way, the surface of the sun only has 8 times more gravity than is on the surface of the Earth. Just a little fact you should be aware of. The sun isn't very dense. So delete that piece of shit. I mean, he posted all this before, and I deleted it, and he just keeps posting crap. So there's a point where I guess I just have to report you as a harasser. You're an amazingly stupid retard. Everybody already knew Einstein's formula is twice as large as the classical formula. Then what are you arguing it for? So my assertion was perfectly correct. That's not what's in dispute. Oh, I think it is exactly all. The only argument I'm making is that Einstein created a fake circumstance just for photons, so photons are affected by gravity twice as much. They're bent by gravity twice as much. That's what I said. That's what I continue to say. And it's a nonsense. There's no reason to think photons are twice as affected by gravity. All right. The fact is that both formulas are 1/r relations. It doesn't matter if they're 1/r relations when you have the difference between a 4 and a 2. Obviously, they've put the square part in the doubling of the other part of the fraction. So if you double the amount in one portion and halve the amount in the other portion, it's essentially halving. Obviously, reducing a square isn't unhalving, but we're talking about the derivation of the formula. So obviously, a square came up to the number 2, and getting rid of the square comes up to the number 4. So it's clearly a doubling of the part of the formula that's going to be divided by the mass times the velocity. I mean, the distance times the velocity. So, you know, you're just playing word games here, just obvious bullshit word games. They're not the same formula. The 1/r, they're not, I mean, clearly they're different formulas. That's why they come up with a different number, a completely different number in the sense that the numbers are twice. One number's twice as big as the other number. They're not a little bit different. They're substantially different numbers. I mean, how can you be so dishonest to imply that Newton's number is somehow the same as Einstein's number, derived on the same premise? They're not derived from the same premise, and they're not the same number. Amazing lies. And your distraction about the extra 2x constant, it's a distraction. Something's twice as much is a distraction. And it's not a 2x constant. It's a 2x. It's 2 times the mass. he's essentially making the sun twice as heavy for photons. So when a photon goes by, the sun's mass is twice as much mass. It's 2 gm, which is the same thing as saying 2 mg, idiot. God damn, you're fucking retarded. All right, it has nothing to do with the discussion. Yeah, it does, idiot. We're talking about the 1r versus 1r squared relation. There's no such thing. The two formulas are completely different. The force formula versus the formula to predict the amount of deflection going into an orbit. The two formulas, one's a derivative of the other one. To sit there and say, I'm going to play, you're just playing a word game. Clearly, the 2 versus the 4 is the same as the r versus the r squared. That's the proportional difference in the two formulas. Newton had r squared, Einstein put r. Newton had 2 gm, Einstein says 4 gm. That's the proportional relationship difference. And it's perfectly rational, and I've explained it accurately. You lying piece of crap. And both Einstein's theory and Newton's theory give the 1/r relation. There's no, that's just a preposterous lie. There's no 1/r because they've changed the location of the multiplier. That's what the 2 and the 4 are. The 2 and the 4 weren't in the other equations, were there? There was no 2 gm in Einstein in Newton's force equation. The 2 and the 4 have replaced the square on the r, you retard. Oh, God. So dishonest. All right, delete that. All right, now post links to screen captures of his previous crap comments. And they are just crap that aren't very visible. Let's see, is there some way to make them bigger? Well, just try the control shit. All right, and another, by the way, that link itself starts with Newton's formula and applies. It doesn't even fit in the screen. These stupid image captures. He doesn't even know how to capture text, and applies to Newtonian trajectories to find the angle. Well, let's not just call them Newtonian trajectories. Let's just call them the only accurate trajectories ever calculated. Okay, they're not just Newton trajectories. They're the same trajectories that NASA uses. They're the same ones everybody uses. They're the only trajectories that are accurate. Okay, so it doesn't just apply to Newton. And it's Einstein who's created the fake trajectory with the doubled number, changing the 2 into a 4, just for photons. No other object in the universe, just photons. They get a special formula. All right, the formula for the angle of the real trajectory is not the same as the formula for the force of gravity at a single point at a single time. Duh! And where did I argue otherwise? Yes, the formula to calculate how much the gravity over time affects the motion of something is different, yes, than the formula for a static object. Where did I say anything different? I pointed out that that's the whole thing at issue here, is velocity. Oh, amazing. You say the person didn't read the article. Oh, so he's defending the idiot who posted the original crap. Yes, a mindless marble move, no doubt. Yet you're the one who doesn't even know what the article did do. I've perfectly accurately described what the article does. And again, the article clearly states exactly what I did say about the two numbers being half of each other. It clearly even states, well, I'll show you that, actually. Just so, I mean, I'll re-rub it in your nose. How the calculation is for the surface of the sun. All right, so it can't even apply. This 1.75 arc seconds applies to a calculation done on the surface of the sun. So it's right here. Assuming that the light ray passes close to the sun. Now, when they mean close, they mean right on its surface. We take R to be the solar radius. So they've taken R, the number they put in the equation, when they do the equation, they've taken 1 solar radius, which is the sun's surface. So this is how much deflection if the photon travels right against the surface of the sun. Now, I think any one of you people, if there are any people, can figure out that obviously you can't do that on the surface of the sun. We can't see a photon that travels across the surface of the sun in its normal position because there's a ton of energy coming out of the sun, and that energy will deflect the photon in all kinds of bizarre ways. I think you can all know that that photon's getting scattered. It's not going to be disturbed by gravity. It's going to be disturbed by molecular motion, which is another subject I want to get to with the redshift. Yeah, so remind me. I have a redshift point to make. Using values all in SI units for the universal constant of gravitation, which is, again, this is the gravitational constant just puts it into units. So it doesn't, there's no real gravitational constant. It's just an irrelevant number. The solar mass and the radius. So here's the radius of the sun. So they use the radius of the sun, which means the number is for the surface of the sun. So Newton's number for the surface of the sun is 0.87 arc seconds of deflection. Obviously, any further away you go from that sun, like with an asteroid or anything else, it'll bend less and less and less and less and less. So quite obviously that number gets lower and lower and lower and smaller and smaller and smaller as you go further and further away from the sun. Oh, God, these people are just so dishonest. Yeah, so I think I'm done. Done with that. I don't think, is there anything else to argue here? So clearly, it's just the difference is this 4 number. Einstein just erased the 2 for photons and put a 4 in there. So it goes from 2 to 4, which is obviously a doubling of the magnitude. No way around that. Multiply by 2, multiply by 4, you've doubled the magnitude of whatever the thing is you multiplied against. It means you just made the sun twice as big, twice as heavy. So you just made the sun twice as massive just for photons. And you people think that's rational. That's, yeah, it makes sense to me. Sure. Photons are gravity whores. They're always looking for some gravity to eat, sucking it up wherever they can find it. All right, so I'll read some of this. Well, let me do the lensing, or the redshift argument, because I'll just forget if I don't do it. All right. So we were talking previously about the fact that distant objects have this redshift thing, and I was making the point that the redshift could be caused by the photons traveling billions of light years through space encounter atoms of transparent material, that is, transparent atoms, oxygen, noble gases, hydrogen, especially hydrogen atoms, and helium atoms, and that they get transmitted through those atoms, the light, and continues on its way. And through that process, the light gets redshifted. And the part I forgot, which is just so damn obvious, is if you think about the motion of the atoms, okay, now which way, if something was to go through a field of atoms moving in all directions, right? All directions. The atoms are moving in all directions, and something goes through that field. What direction will the something hit more atoms going in than any other direction? Well, obviously it wouldn't be going the same way because these are always lagging behind. Okay, so they're never going to be more this way, and there's no reason to think there's more going this way than this way. So the winner is going to be this way. You're going to encounter more atoms going against your direction than with your direction. You're going to hit more things head on than hit things from behind. Logically, you can understand that. So the atoms you hit are going to be moving in the opposite direction to your motion. So now you can understand that when the photon hits the atom's already moving towards it. So the likelihood is, so over time, the photon hits more atoms moving towards it than away from it, which means it incurs more retardation against its momentum over all of those calculations. So when it hits a transparent atom and it's moving towards it, the frequency of the absorbed light is retarded because of the motion away from the target. See, the target's over here. And when the light gets readmitted, it's going to be readmitted, the photon, by an object moving away from the target. So you can sort of understand that's why it's going to be redshifted, because it's going to be absorbed. And then when it's readmitted, it's going to be readmitted from an object moving away from the object that it eventually is going to be seen by our telescope. That's why there's redshift. So I've just improved my previous theory by at least 50%. You know, it's a huge point in favor of my theory. So anyway, so let's do some, whatever this is. The forgetful function, nor something like that. No one is saying the strength of gravity follows a 1 over R rule. I don't know what this is. Clearly, this asshole's arguing in some way or other, okay, that there is some good reason to think gravity changes for photons, and that if you could change gravity in that way, that somehow it would make lensing with the wrong shape lens okay, when it still doesn't fix that. Okay, changing how, making the gravity twice as effective on photons certainly helps your idiotic lensing argument, but it doesn't fix the wrong shape lens problem. It doesn't fix a lot of the problems, and it creates new problems, because now that you make photons easier to bend, then you have to explain why more of them aren't getting bent. Yeah. People are saying that the angle formula is the accumulated effect of gravity over the photon's path. And again, who's arguing against that? That's what the 2 GM versus the 4 GM is a representation of. Clearly, I'm not disputing the fact that you know, the effect of gravity is represented in putting that 2 number times the mass. That's representing the diminishment of the gravity. That's creating the big fat thing on the top of the fraction, the big number that the other number has to be divided into. Obviously, the bottom number gets really weak. Even though you made it stronger, you know, it gets really weak when you have a big giant top number. Well, whatever. There's no point. You people are beyond help. I'm no fan of warped space, but I think if warped space exists, well, again, the very word warped is such a cartoon caricature of the reality that it doesn't mean anything. It's a convergence of space. That's the fact. That's how the real physicists describe it. It's an anti-divergence. You know, stuff moves, okay, from things that are far apart, and they move closer together. They move, you know, they're condensed. They're, I don't know how it's, and they describe it as a drain, water going down a drain. I mean, come on. That's what it is. It's a vacuum cleaner. It's not warped space. It's removed space. That would also influence the path of an asteroid that this formula might not take into account. So I don't even know what how that's relevant. the whole argument is about what the nature of the gravity is, but there's no, frankly, there's no argument about how it spherically functions, okay? My description and Suskind's description are the same. He's saying it's a magical, spooky action force with no mechanism. It's just sucking away space-time. Space-time is removed into the center of mass, disappears into the center of the singularity of the atom or the singularity of the electron. And I'm arguing, no, there's an external force that's pushing it. That's the only difference. I have a real force, they have no force. But the fact that it's spherical and symmetrical, we're both arguing that. That integration removes one dimension, hence the 2gm over, there's no over, well, RC squared, yes. C squared is only in there because that's the velocity of light. So understand, it's the velocity squared. So the formula is the velocity squared. It's not C squared. So you can have any object moving any velocity and use this formula. So it can be going 2 miles an hour or 4 million meters per second. It's going to give you the right answer. This equation is the same equation for any object moving any speed. And the weight of the object is irrelevant, quite obviously. The weight of the object isn't in the formula. There's just the mass of the sun or the object imposing the gravity. And clearly, okay, clearly when you change the 2 to a 4, you've doubled the mass. Will you admit that you don't realize that? No, fuck you. I'm not doing this will I admit crap, so you're going to get blocked. Or are you going to do that usual goalpost moving? I have nothing to admit. I've said nothing inaccurate here. This is just absolute. I'm going to block you now. Let's see if you have anything else to say. But yeah, that's disgusting. I have nothing to admit here. There's no, I've said nothing wrong. I've done nothing wrong. I've pointed out exactly what the fuck the formula is. This is just such horseshit. I have no obligation to admit anything except you are a liar and a cunt. You're a despicable human being and you get what you deserve. I'll say that on the integrity of my entire family's lineage. All right, I've done nothing dishonest here. You're the fucking asshole. All right, second day here. I love this. I mean, in all the universe, think about it. To be alive and talking about stars, suns, that's just a universal subject that is shared in all galaxies. Good stuff here. I don't, I don't see it. To have to argue about 2 + 2 = 4. To have to argue, essentially, that's all we're arguing here. We're arguing. Oh, we have a fake gimmick to sit there, and we have a horrible experiment that doesn't prove anything. Okay, that's beyond even the capacity of our technology, certainly 100 years ago. Again, this 0.78 arc seconds was a hopeless task. Einstein doubled it, so they had 1.25, but that's on the surface of the sun. So clearly, the number in any realistic place, you're going to be able to resolve another object in the corona of the sun, far enough away from the sun not to have scatter. That number is reduced again to 0.42. It gets even more untenable. Even with Einstein's 4 in the equation, you're still screwed. Let's see. No, it doesn't. The 4 doesn't have anything to do with the 1/r factor. It's entirely to do with going from r squared in the force equation to going to 1/r. The 4gm is an exact derivation from the fact that you changed the original equation, the g1 plus g2, blah, 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 m1 plus m2, blah, 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 with the r squared under it, and you took the squared off. The same, that's where it came from. So you're just so full of shit. You're the one confused, idiot. That wasn't your argument initially. It's the same argument been made over and over again. So just keep lying, you fucking liar. I see that it changed. Nothing changed. What the actual fuck? You can just keep doing all these pointless expressions. You're pointing out nothing. You're saying absolutely nothing. You're demonstrating nothing. The link is garbage. The experiment is garbage. Everything I've said is exactly accurate about what the fuck this crap is, which is just a bunch of crap. And again, I've pointed out that this stupid number is for the surface of the sun. Do you realistically think anybody has seen background stars, the light going across the surface of the sun? Do you think anybody's done that, jackass? I seriously can't comprehend how anyone could be this confused. Well, anyway, I'm not confused, and you're a lying piece of shit. You are talking about the 1 over r. I'm not talking about any of this r crap. That's your crap. I'm talking about the fact that it equates to removing the r squared. Putting a 4 instead of a 2 only for photons is the same as just eliminating the square on the r in the other equation. It's exactly comparable. All right. Being in the formula itself. Now you say it's okay for 1 over r to be there. There's no 1 over r, so I don't even know what you keep talking about. The 4 is the number. That'd be amazing. But the 4 has something to do with having 1 over r. No, it has something to do with the fact that it's twice as much mass. You gave the sun twice as much mass, which is effectively the same thing as, well, it's effectively the same thing. It's effectively the same thing over a linear path through an orbit as removing the r squared. This makes no sense. Oh my God. Keep saying nothing. Less gravity and less bending and further away you go. That's what you're apparently arguing. Yes, he says yes. 4x less. Amazing. No, he's agreeing with me. Less gravity and less bending the further away you go. Okay, that's my quote. Yes, 4 times less. But the path is 2 times longer and further away you are, hence. So again, but he's going back to the same argument. They're trying to say that because you're in the gravity longer, that somehow you can undo the fact that the gravity's always getting weaker. So he really does think that the further away I go, the more the light bends. No, it wasn't. You were talking about 1 over r versus 1 over r squared. I never brought up any of this 1 over r versus 1 over r squared thing beyond just pointing out that when you do that, that derives to the orbital equations that converts into the difference between 2 GM and 4 GM. That's exactly how you get those different numbers. You erase the r squared, then derive the equation for the orbital equation, and you'll get the 4 number instead of the 2. Einstein didn't just write a 4, you know. He didn't just say, I'm going to erase the 2 and put a 4. He derived it by first erasing the r squared. Damn, you're stupid. You screwed up, and now you're saying that you were justified all along because it has something to do with 2 versus 4. Now, you're done. Okay, this is just a waste of time. Just a waste of time. You're not saying anything at all. I don't retract anything I said. I didn't say everything perfectly, but I certainly haven't made any catastrophic errors in this conversation. So fuck you till you are dead. You useless piece of shit. All right. Let's see if there's anything else here. Love this. Okay, now we're done with that. If one thinks gravity is real, oh, another idiot. I don't think gravity is actual. Then why don't you just go fucking suck Sasquatch's dick or something, then, you stupid idiot. What we experience is a quark force phenomenon. Oh, just make up some kind of crap. Okay, so you have a whole quirky theory somewhere, huh? Quarks are distorted by Planck fluxes, which, all right, well, anyway, fuck off. Just leave. You're just useless. I'm not here to debunk Sasquatch theories. It's just a waste of my time. So you either defend conventional physics or you attack my physics, but I'm not going to argue your made-up fantasy, wet dream bullshit. Asshole. God damn it. Are you going to acknowledge the same approach? I'm not playing this. I have nothing to acknowledge. I haven't made a single dishonest or untruthful or in any way deliberately deceptive statement. And I say that on my sister's lives, on their kids' lives, on whatever the fuck is precious to me in the universe, you fucking cunt. So quit implying that I have some other agenda, but to attempt to describe the circumstance accurately, you fucking lying sack of shit. All right, that classical deflection formula has an R. I'm not doing this 1 over R thing in the deflection formula. I've already explained there is no over the R in the deflection formula. They replaced that with the 4 and the 2. God damn it, you're insane. All right, so I got rid of a good pile of crap. Stuffed Boyd. What that means, I think I'll just, I don't know, what do you want me to do? You want me to block you for this? I don't know what that means. Stuffed Boyd? What the fuck is that shit? God. I don't know. What the hell do I do? I'll just remove it. But god damn, can you type something that's some sort of rational sentence? God, I hate people. Fucking putrid jargon. Oh. Amazing asshole. So the clear point is there's a huge difference between having the number 4 and the number 2. The difference being you've doubled the mass of the sun. So obviously that's a gigantic change in reality. Doubling the mass of the sun. We'd be flying into the sun right now if that was the reality. Okay. So, you can just try to calculate all the differences that would take place. Huge change in reality. Twice as massive. It's just a fudge factor. What the fuck? What are you talking about? I mean, it's amazing. I don't know. There is no explanation, in my opinion. I've seen no articulation of exactly why it is Einstein played this stupid game with bending photons. I don't see how it helps his formula in any way, whatever. There's nothing to look up, asshole. What are you talking about? Look it up. Fuck yourself till dead. I don't have to look it up. It's obviously not a fudge factor. A fudge factor would have some purpose, as I just pointed out. This doesn't have any fucking purpose to play with the game with this bullshit. All right? It has to sit there and declare that somehow I'm Einstein and I know that photons are twice as affected by gravity. Nothing else is. I mean, what are they going to do with neutrinos now, right? I mean, neutrinos are supposed to be even less real than photons, but somehow they're more material. So are neutrinos really affected by gravity, or are neutrinos not affected by gravity? I mean, it's just such a pile of shit. You're so negative. Well, you can go die. Fuck you. I'm negative, obviously, for a reason. I'm getting slandered by douchebags, and then idiots like you show up and talk absolute meaningless rubbish. Bravo, fuckhead. Off subject. What are your thoughts on the speed of light being the speed limit? Obviously, I've made it so fucking clear that I obviously have pointed out it's the only speed force travels. No bit of force ever travels any other speed. Ever. Ever. Magnetism never goes any other speed. A piece of gravity never goes any. Nothing moves any other speed. And it's the only stuff technically fucking moving. Anything else moving is moving because a force is pushing it. Something moving the speed of light. So all there really is in the universe, if you want to metaphor it to fish, is there's a bunch of fish. They're all identical and they're all moving the same fucking speed. And all they do is push big balls of bullshit around. They bang into it and the piece of bullshit moves. And that's all there is in the universe. Fucking idiots. Sorry. It's not that it was off subject. I've only said it in every video I've ever made. You know. I mean, it's not a legitimate question to ask. I am simply not a fan of any constants. Well, I don't care. I mean, it's just stupid. I'm not a fan of a constant. Why? But why? Why would you not be a fan of a constant? Like the fact that every photon is exactly the same or every electron is exactly the same. Why shouldn't it be? It's a simple thing. I mean, do you think a checkerboard is made of constant squares and the checkers are constant? What's wrong with constants? I mean, you're not a fan. For what rational reason do you see something wrong with there being constants in the universe? Like the universe would create grains of sand that look pretty much all the same when you think about it. You know, it's all the same. Oh, yes, each one is unique, but technically they're all the same. It's just stupid. I don't even know how you're a skeptic on C being a constant. It's just such a hilarious notion. There's absolutely not a single shred of evidence that certainly anything moving faster than a C ever. That's certainly nowhere close to any evidence of that. And again, what's the evidence of the speed of light being inconstant for any medium even? It's always the same amount of degrade if you push it through a medium. So in empty space, it's always the same speed. It has every appearance of being something constant. Damn. Where is your evidence that Einstein started with a 1/r relationship? Relation for the strength of the gravity. I just said, how do you think he derived the equation? Are you an imbecile? Do you think he just sat there? You really think he did? He just sat there and said, I'll just take this orbital equation and I'll just cross out the 2 and put a 4. You really think he did that? Now, go back to his paper. I'm sure you'll see where he says, no, we're changing this force equation. All right? It's different for photons. And that's the derived difference. Shit. But I will say, how could it possibly matter which one he crossed out? Whether he crossed out the r squared or he puts a 4 where a 2 should be. What's the difference? It's still an arbitrary change for no good reason. And that's the real point. Why did he do it? What's the purpose of it? Where is there any evidence? Where did Einstein have any evidence photons make the sun twice as heavy? Because that's what he did to the formula. The formula makes the sun twice as heavy. Changing the 2 to a 4 makes the formula say the sun is twice as heavy. Why is the sun twice as heavy for photons and not for anything else? You hold others to high standard. No, I don't. You have to be barely reasonable, barely polite, and linked to something barely accurate. And you can't muster that. And as for sources for their claims, can you do the same for yourself? Again, I don't have to. I'm not the one defending conventional physics. Why? What do I need a source for? unless you're going to tell me that conventional physics say, and then I'll point out, well, I'm the one who's done it. I'm the one who's shown what the two slit pattern looks like. I'm the one who's shown what the single slit does. I've shown it. So I have done the same, jackass. And then I've done the experiment on my own porch to demonstrate how I can make the interferometer pattern, and I don't have to make any photons interfere with each other. I have done that, jackass. Ted Bundy. I should block you just for your name. I mean, it's a disgusting name. You know, he tortured and then killed women. You do understand that, right? He tortured people, tortured them for his own gratification. All right, so I'm just going to block it. It's a disgusting name. You're a disgustingly putrid piece of shit to sit there and ride on Ted Bundy's name. I mean constant as in c, the speed of light. Again, it's the speed of force, asshole, as I've pointed out, but I don't, why reiterate what I've already said fuck you about? I've said it over and over again. Fine, you don't believe in constants for no rational reason. Go ahead and do that. I'm saying there's not one single piece of evidence indicating there's constants are in any trouble at all. The constants are doing quite fine. They're not the ones erasing 2s and writing in 4s, idiot. Oh, I'm terrified to ask anything. Well, you're going to ask something stupid, right? You should be terrified to go on somebody's channel and you know, where obviously you haven't paid any attention. You obviously haven't been to my website. You haven't done anything. If you think there's some, like I somehow agree that constants are bullshit, when no, all the constants are really great. I love the constants. They make perfect sense. Anyway, because I'm going to get the hatchet, but I can't handle it. Gary, I do like your fish analogy. I just saw this afternoon. Yeah, well, why don't you just wait till you're caught up and then start meandering into your own little wacky crap where you have to bring up something like you don't know what you don't believe in constants. They give you the willies, and like I'm supposed to be impressed. Oh, anonymous guy on the internet is afraid of constants. Therefore, I should do what? I mean, it's like saying you're afraid of Bic pens. I'm not. And no, nothing is constant. Pile of crap. There is no constant squares. Well, whatever. Fuck you. I don't agree. That's just nonsense. Garbage, rubbish, silly baby talk. But off topic, but any theories on Booty's void? Booties? What the fuck are you talking about? Yes, it's off topic. Go fuck yourself. I won't block you, but do it again, and yeah, fuck you. I don't know what that fucking shit is. Why should I care? Shit. By the way, referring to that question left open on whether the sun increases or decreases in mass, it obviously doesn't. I did a little research. I read the sun is losing about 6 times 10 to the 12 grams per second. Yes, that's what I've theorized. Yes, it's burning that much fuel, which is a tiny fraction of its mass, by the way. It would take a zillion years for the sun to run out of fuel at that rate of loss. All right. That was referring to the criticism that I had about black holes not existing last evening. Again, I just couldn't care in that I don't think sun increases in mass anyway, just to share. Well, again, I don't even care. I've pointed out how I just couldn't give a shit whether the sun's getting heavier or lighter. I'm not going to waste my time trying to figure it out. I'm not going to waste my time figuring out how much energy leaves the sun, how much crap falls into the sun. I couldn't give a shit. You know, absolutely uninteresting to me. Incredibly uninteresting. Insanely uninteresting. As uninteresting as how many rocks are stuck in the tread of my neighbor's tires. It's so fucking uninteresting. That was referring to the criticism I had. Okay. I mean, black holes are a little different than a sun. Do your detractors have any formula for the effects of matter in a solar atmosphere? There's no point in talking about effects in a solar atmosphere because obviously those effects are going to be scattered even if the object is a cardboard box. The box will be sucked into some places and pushed out in other places. Obviously burned up, but I just mean if it was a non-flammable box, obviously it would be in certain locations, it could be dramatically pushed in different directions. I was wondering for the effects of matter in a solar atmosphere are the relationship to its density over distance and its effects on the photon deflect. So I don't know what that even, so quite useless. Thank you. Obviously the detractors don't have anything. They don't even realize that that Eddington's number is on its face wrong, just because the amount of deflection you could possibly get for the stars Eddington was looking at. Obviously, I've seen some vague image of the Eddington glass plates, and it's like this, it's like the sun is here, okay, in the eclipse, and the stars are like here. Okay, they're quite a distance from the sun. So the number 1.75 is for right here next to the sun. Obviously, here the number should be much lower. Obviously. Oh, shit. I agree on blocking that person that used Bundy. That was an eyesore to see. Yeah, well, all of them. I can't stand these people who can't name themselves something reasonably polite. Laughing hard on the anonymous guy with the internet afraid of constants. We don't need to be doing too much laughing. We already have enough trouble. Anyway, that comment was funny as hell. It's all good. Well, nothing's all good. Anyway, to be quiet and just listen to the Chan. I don't know what that means. Black holes doing, I don't know. I mean, I've made it so clear so many times. I just find this subject of black holes totally uninteresting. There's absolutely no real hard evidence. The idea of us having conversations or speculating about how big something could get and how heavy and how massive and how much pressure will be in the center, blah, 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 blah. I don't believe there are any masses the size of a grapefruit that have a billion solar masses in them. I think that notion is preposterously silly. Now, do I believe that maybe neutrons, can be smashed a little bit closer together than atoms can, and that you can create a more dense object out of neutrons? Yeah, that might be possible. But there's limits. Okay, there's limits. Clearly, the pressure doesn't stop increasing. All right, laughing hard. Okay, anyway, black holes. Well, last night you said you were going to look up if the sun is losing energy or not. I didn't say I would do that, so you misunderstood. Yeah, sorry, you misunderstood. I didn't say that. I might have said, someday I'll look that up. Or blah, 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 but I don't think I made any kind of serious claim that I just need to know and I'm going to go look it up because I think somebody knows the answer. Because I was pretty sure nobody knows that answer anyway. They can't even figure out that the Eddington number is for the surface of the sun. They can't even figure out that it's impossible to use a number that's for the first surface of the sun. That's just really stupid to do. You ought to get the real number for the real location where Eddington was seeing the deflection, and then talk about how he could see such a tiny deflection. That somehow he had the tools to do that. Can you provide a source for your claims? Capital letters. Fuck you. that Einstein used 1/r factor to get the 4 factor. You hold others to high standards, asking for sources. So can you, I'm just saying, go find Einstein's paper. Einstein clearly in his paper didn't just go, I'm erasing the 2 and putting a 4. So if you think that's what Einstein did, okay, fine. I'm saying I don't really care enough. Now, if you care, go ahead and look it up. I said, it doesn't matter to me. What part of this don't you understand? He took a number 2 and erased it. That happened. Now, whether it happened to the r squared 2 or whether it happened to Newton's 2, doesn't really matter. So in one case, he erases the 2 and that's all he does. And in the other case, he erases the 2 and puts a 4. Those are the 2 things he did. One of those 2 things. He just erases a 2 in one formula. Okay, that's one argument. The other argument is he erases a 2 and puts a 4. Now you tell me how it makes a difference which one he did. Explain how that makes a difference. You fucking cunt. I'm just telling you there's very little likelihood that he just erased the 4 because he had to derive the equation. But it doesn't matter to me. Fine, let's have it your way. He erased the 2 and put a 4. Why? What logic led him to that conclusion? Why are photons, how do photons make the sun twice as massive? How do photons make the sun twice as massive? Because that's what he did to the equation. He made the sun twice as massive. You want another link? What are you talking about? Another link to what? It's just amazing. Do you want another link? You can't post links, so tough shit. Binary star? Question mark. What are you even talking about? Jesus Christ. Binary star. I already made arguments about how galaxies must be made out of binary systems, and that even solar systems had to likely, all the solar systems were 1-point binary systems. That's why they're flat. All the flat things had to be binary systems. But who cares? How is it relevant to any of this conversation about Einstein erasing a 2 and putting a 4 in, or doubling the mass of the sun just for photons? How is binary star relevant to that point? Give me the title of your link. Fine. Where? Give me the title. Give me the Googleable web page that shows this reason why, where the 4 factor comes from. Clearly, it just comes from the fact that it's twice as much gravity. It's twice as much mass. Again, it's so fucking obvious. 4 times is twice as much as 2 times. 4 times is twice as much as 2 times. That means you doubled the mass, which is the same as doubling the gravity. My name, Hung Lu, I find very confusing. Okay, well, you're done here, John. I don't know what that weird shit is. I mean, the only rationale I've heard for Einstein's idiotic 4 factor is the fact that he had this idea that the photon is moving the speed of light. Therefore, it thinks it's in the gravity twice as long because it's, you know, it's moving fast and it's time dilated. So it thinks it's in the gravity twice as long because it's time dilated. You get it? Its brain is moving really slow because the photon's moving really fast. So it thinks it was in the gravity twice as long. And therefore it got twice as much gravity because it thinks so. I don't know. Another ambiguous mush thing. Any thoughts on whether gravity requires mass? I don't even know how anybody can make any sense out of that. Obviously, you have to be able to be affected by gravity. That means you have to have at least a mass of 1 or something. You have to have something called mass to be affected by gravity, and clearly to make gravity, you have to have mass. So just an idiotic question. I think the page is doubling the deflection math pages. Well, that sounds very exciting. I don't think that's going to explain what Einstein did, but fine, I will. It sounds like another link math pages. I mean, it just sounds bad to me. So on my off time, I will inspect to see if you have any use at all or whether you're just wasting my time. Doubling the mass to prove bent space and time dilation to match the total deflection. So again, I just don't understand. That doesn't mean anything. Doubled the mass to proof bent space. How does doubling the mass of the sun prove bent space and time dilation? To match the total deflection. I don't, how can anybody make anything out of that? What's the reasoning of this argument? I don't understand any of it. Well, it comes back to that floating frog. Damn, man, you're really losing points with me fast. That floating frog, electromagnetic rendered gravity non-existing. Again, it's not non-existing. It's just balancing against it. It's a laser beam pushing up on something. It doesn't make gravity go away. If I take a laser beam and I push up on something and make it float, if I take air and push up on it, make it float, I haven't undone gravity. I've just pushed another force. Jesus Christ. You initial argument was that he used the 1 over r. Okay, you're done here. Strength for gravity in this video. I've said over and over again, exactly the same effect. If you derive the orbital equation from the force equation to get a 4, you remove the r squared and just have an r. If you want to get a 2, you leave the r squared. So if you leave the r squared, it'll be 2 times g times m. If you remove the square from the r, the derivation will produce 4 gm. Okay, so there's no, I'm not being duplicitous, but just fuck off. You're done. I mean, I'm just not putting up with this shit. I've explained it 15 ways, 15 times. This is just idiotic. Fuck you. 20 viewers was 16. So you really just keep talking irrelevant shit, don't you? I told everyone in my software programming channel. Yes, so what? I've had 20 viewers rather routinely. That's the average number. We talk about physics sometimes in software chat. Scares the hell out of me about how scary constants are. Okay, I get what you mean. It doesn't go away. It just counteracted. Yes. By the way, if we have r cubed, oh, there's no r cubed. There's no r cubed. We can do 8 just as we do 4 for r squared. Oh, it's going to make me have to kill somebody. Scuffed 1 plus 1 equals 4. I don't know what that means. Clearly, I'm pointing out that Einstein thinks 2 equals 4. And it doesn't. I've seen that in Kepler's equations for planet motion. You've seen what? Oh. I really don't want to argue it, but I mean, I'm not the one saying these are the equations. I didn't derive any of these equations. I'm just saying they've obviously used these equations to decide the path of satellites to go to Saturn. They obviously are working equations. They work. So clearly, this is the force law. Clearly, this is how it's time derived. So why do I have to sit there and validate Kepler's equation? I don't care about Kepler's equations. The equations that we're talking about are Newton equations, and they haven't changed. And the only Newton equation that got changed by Einstein here in this example is he took a 2 and erased it and put a 4 for photons. That's the only change. The two equations are the same if we're talking about a satellite or we're talking about an electron or we're talking about a proton. Then the equations are the same. Einstein doesn't erase the 2. It's only when we're talking about photons, then he erases the 2 and puts a 4. Why do I have to keep arguing this? We're talking about one change Einstein made under one circumstance. We're not talking about all the equations physics has to decide how round a circle is. Shit. No one even commented on my brilliant redshift analysis. Really is a good bit of work. I know you said you don't like most people. Frankly, it's so close to all people that I don't even know why I would say most. Anyway, I do find you interesting and damned cool, even when you get a bit angry. It's still, frankly, it's irrelevant, but okay. What do you want me to say? I can't be swayed by people saying, "Oh, Gary, I like you. You're cute." I mean, that doesn't mean anything. That's not useful. People have to make arguments from authority and integrity, arguments that mean something. Saying I like you, Gary, just doesn't do my cause. It's not what I'm looking for. Yes, I mean, there are people who are kind and decent, and so I have no reason to dislike them beyond the fact that they happen to be of the human species, which just makes them smelly and stinky and horrible. I mean, I'm like Agent Smith. I just can't stand the stink of you people. Even if you are, a decent person, you're still fucking disgusting humans. Ugh, and humans are gross as a species. It's more disgusting than the whatever the organism that has the most anuses. Humans are more disgusting than that organism. It is a subject to ponder, isn't it? I never really thought about it, but there's organisms that have multiple stomachs, and there probably is some kind of stupid fucking microbe that has like 17 anuses. Probably shoots shit in a hyperborealoid pattern, you know, while it toroidally spins. Four GMRC squared. This really is like, again, they keep using that 1.75 number, and that's for the surface of the sun. Well, I don't see how your hygiene improves, frankly. You know, double anus just doesn't. I wouldn't want one. I'm about to fail math, and this doesn't help. XD. Well, I'm sorry. I don't know why it doesn't help. I mean, to me, it, any just pointing out how, you just erase a number. What the hell? No big deal. Double the mass of the sun. Who cares? ScienceDaily.com a year ago showed a picture of a microbe that is both an anus and a mouth. Quite remarkable. Well, that just sounds kind of like a gimmick. you know, I mean, obviously owls have that in a way, right? I mean, an owl eats something, their gut pulls the fur off, and then it just pukes out the fur. So, I mean, it's sort of anal mouthy. Yes, I'm not Googling it. Doesn't sound nearly as cute as owls barfing up mouse fur. I'd rather have a black hole that takes all the poo mass, puts it into a tiny, tiny little pellet that I fart out after death. I'm just saying there's nothing interesting about a microorganism that consumes something, digests it in one organ, a mouth, and then spits it out. I mean, that's not exactly miraculous. Well, that's sort of another, I don't know, I'm sorry. It's just when people start talking about how there's something mathematically amazing about flight or something, it's obviously not mathematically amazing. It's just a property of buoyancy. It's swimming. Flying is swimming. I mean, no one's amazed by fish. Oh, how do they do that? Swimming thing. So, I mean, advanced math needed for flight, question mark. Seems there are life forms that just know this or do it. Yes, clearly, it's not miraculous. The fact that we have a difficult time dealing with all the variables in an atmosphere and creating formulas that exactly duplicate the complexity of thin atmosphere swimming, okay, doesn't mean that swimming is complicated. Anyway, by swimming one day, I got to thinking we are just bottom dwellers in an ocean of air. Well, uh, you have to understand, though, there's no plankton in the ocean. So it's a sterile air. The air is so sterile that there's no reason not to be a bottom feeder because there's nothing to feed on in the ocean of the air, except for birds, and bats. Oh, there's other flying bugs, but it's not very, there's not a high enough density of food up there. And the trick is to stay up there, unlike in the ocean where all you have to do is have ballast, a little bit of air in a sack to float. You can't do that in the atmosphere, you know, conveniently. You can't have a big giant hydrogen balloon, because you blow up. Do people stop by the house? It's not any of your business to talk theories and plants, or do you just bullshit? I don't even know what that means, but whatever. Fuck you. I don't even know what is that question. Do people stop by the house to talk theories and plants? I don't even know why you would put the two subjects together. I mean, I would argue that talking plants would be bullshit. Talking theories would be some other kind of conversation, or to just bullshit. Did you know any people who do anything but talk shit? I don't even know if they talk bullshit. It's just shit usually. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know too many people able to have a conversation at my level. Okay. I don't know too many. So I always have to have a bullshit conversation with anybody else because they can't do my level. Okay. Indeed, just as oceanic life evolved to land, I sometimes wonder if humans are the first to evolve to space. You can go ahead and wonder. I don't think it's at all interesting wondering again until something lives in space to eat or to fuck or something. Why would why would anything want to live in space? Very inhospitable out there. And clearly, we're not going to evolve to space. We're going to engineer our way to living in space. So it won't have anything to do with evolution. I mean, we're not going to physically adapt to space. We're going to make space adapt to us. Well, I always tell myself we are always in the middle of a deep black space, no matter where we are talking about. Well, that's a good thing to keep in mind, that the only universe is the small universe. The big universe is an illusion, a byproduct of the small universe. There's only one universe, and it's the little one. The empty space is the empty space between the atoms. There is no other empty space. Let's see. I don't know about that, Gary. How do you not know about what? I think I might consider our ability to engineer part of an evolving brain. Well, again, you can think it, but that's just idiotic. Obviously, the brain doesn't evolve to have these thoughts. It has to be educated to have the thoughts. So there's no evolution required here. That's just bullshit. Sorry. What is heat? Heat is motion, and R, the energy that causes motion. I mean, obviously atoms can absorb acceleration and have velocity. When they're in the state of holding velocity, they contain energy, but they aren't obviously excreting any. But you could say they're heated because they contain velocity, the ability to exert pressure. Then there's the little bits that hit stuff, and the little bits are infrared radiation or some other form of radiation that causes agitation or motion in atoms. So heat is a kind of a complex word because it's made out of two different kinds of motion, the motion of a force and the motion of material objects. I saw your video this afternoon about the small universe. I make a video about the small universe, demonstrating simple rules exist underneath all. You had a school of fish analogy. Yes, I use school of fish analogies. I tend to like the idea of it. It makes it simple to understand. You know, how even when a school of fish is not moving, it's moving. Made sense to me. I like that part where you said, and no school of fish can move faster than a single fish, etc. Well, anyway, I get that you were promoting there are simple rules behind it all. Yes. And I've made those kind of exact now in pointing out the two force elements and the two matter elements. And that the whole thing is just the relationship between those elements. And such. I could move this over a little. Come on, this way. That's it. And put that over here. And so it's all very, it's all quite simple. Get out of my way, bastard. All right. Okay. Oh, 130, 41. Let's see. Yeah, ignore a little while longer. Stephen Wolfram, who I hate, in his book, A New Kind of Science, promotes that simple rules are behind complex systems similar to your thoughts. He's silly. He's one of these silly people who think the simple rule is there's 49 fields running the universe. How is that simple? Everything has its own field. How is that simple? 168,000 ethers. A human ether, a frog ether, a dog ether. It's just nonsense. That is, if I understand you, I might have it wrong. Yes, you have it wrong. They don't understand the word simple at all. Well, I've clearly pointed out what I think of general relativity. I think it's just absolute fucking horseshit. Erasing a 2 and putting a 4 is horseshit. Pretending that light can do anything but move in straight lines at a constant speed, regardless of what frame it's in, is stupid. Light doesn't move forward. If I'm moving in a spaceship, half the speed of light, and there's a beam of laser beam going right in front of me, okay? So I'm stationary, right? And I'm going this way. And there's a laser beam going back and forth in front of me. And now I start accelerating. They think the laser beam keeps doing this. When no, it doesn't keep doing that. The laser beam bends and goes right into me. Because photons go straight across. Each individual photon goes straight. It doesn't have two velocities. It's not a baseball. It doesn't go back and forth in the bus. No, I think that's crap. So that's what I think of relativity. What's your explanation for the twins paradox? I don't have to have an explanation for it because it doesn't exist. People die when you move them really fast. That's my theory. My theory is if you move people really fast, like half the speed of light, they die because all the clocks inside of them break. Their atoms fall apart and they die. What's your explanation? Okay, yeah, there's no such paradox. I am suspect to of relativity. I don't know what that means. I am suspect to of relativity. Okay, comma. But I also don't like those spooky constants. Again, just shut up. Ugh. If there wasn't overwhelming evidence for them, I would say, okay, you have a fair argument, but the evidence is only overwhelming. I don't care if you get angry and go vile with hate, or if you give out free hugs all day. It sounds like it's going to be irrelevant. What I do care about is you're brave enough to say, I think there is a simple model. Well, it's not even that I'm brave enough to say it. I always said it. Point is now I can demonstrate that it works. I'm not just saying when they say photons are doing this shit, I'm not just saying that doesn't make any sense. And then we talk about entangled particles. It doesn't make any. When they talk about time dilation, yeah, I'm not just saying it doesn't make any sense. I'm showing how a really rational, simple principle explains why magnets move into each other. It's not complicated. I can explain why gravitational bodies move into each other. I can explain why the Earth's core is molten. I can explain it. So that's so much better than just saying that sounds like crap. I mean, it was easy to say that spooky action crap sounds like crap. Changing the rules for photons sounds like crap. That's easy to say. But demonstrating why it's crap, like photons for light aren't any different than magnetons or gravitons. So saying that gravity is affected, light is affected by gravity isn't any better than saying gravity is affected by gravity, which they know isn't true. Okay, that was funny as hell. This sounds like it's going to be irrelevant. Yikes. I am a windbag normally in chat, and you are pretty no nonsense. Well, yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, I have a sense of humor. I mean, it's just that, yeah, this is a job. This is my work. I want to get this over with, and having whatever fellowship with other humans. I don't think it's getting the job done. Isn't there evidence for relativity? No, there's just this stupid relationship between velocity and breaking clocks, and this lie that they have evidence of photons being bent by gravity. There's no evidence otherwise, nothing. Oh, Jesus. Like clocks measuring different times in satellites. Again, I mean, I've been over it so many times. Why don't you watch some of my videos? I don't know how you could even think that I haven't already explained 4,000 times a simple explanation. If you're bouncing a bulb up and down, right, it takes a certain amount of time for the ball to get from one point to the next. That could be a clock, right? It has a period. Click, 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 click. Now, if I move that bouncing ball in a direction, the time of the clicks will be slower because because it's the speed of light, the light can't move faster. So it has to move a longer distance, and it can't do it in the same amount of time. So it takes it longer to click, click, click. The clock is broken. I am told all the time I talk too much, ramble too much, and you are someone that says, hey, make each comment count. And now you're just doing, now you're talking about commenting fun. So, well, whatever. It doesn't even have to count, but just somewhere on a physics subject would help. Constants are constant and such. Well, they seem to have a lot of consistent evidence. By the way, I don't buy spooky action at a distance. I know that, but the concept of spooky action at a distance doesn't even mean anything of Einstein coining a phrase where his freaking theory is spooky action at a distance. Bent space is spooky action at a distance. Let's see. And that spooky constant C is the only reason Einstein had to call it spooky action at a distance. Again, that has nothing to do with it. The fact that gravity, like all the forces, move at a constant speed, okay, is just an observed fact. God damn. I read even Einstein was concerned whether C is constant. I just don't know how anyone could possibly be concerned. I just don't know how you people come up with this idea that there's any possibility of a concern. What shred of evidence do you have of photons or gravitons or magnetons not moving the proper speed? Where? Do you have any indication? Your ESP or something? You have some cell phone that it makes calls before I dial. By the way, I thought it wasn't photons are bent by gravity, but more so gravity changes the path. I don't know how you don't understand that the path has to be changed by something. And whatever that something is, obviously I would argue it's impossible because guess what? You can't change the number of photons hitting it, right? Photons don't get exemption from the rain, okay? It's just they don't have some special raincoat that makes the rain hit them twice as much. You can't make stuff like rain fall on you twice as much. You can't do it. You can't make twice as much rain. You can put up an umbrella and block half the rain, but you can't make the rain twice as hard. Oh, fuck. What's the point? People are just with the floating frog, here we go again. Electromagnetic is counteracted by gravity. So I don't even know what you're saying. So I can see gravity affecting electromagnetic. What are you doing? Alas, gravity doesn't bend light, but changes the trajectory of the photon. Photons aren't bent by gravity. You can't bend a force. Can't be done. No force bends. Well, Einstein's reaction to quantum entanglement was spooky action at a distance. And I just pointed out how bent space is spooky action at a distance. He has no reason for the movement. There's electrons and protons inside of atoms, and for some reason they jump from this position to this position to this position. They move for no reason. That's spooky action, in my opinion. I'll just block you if you're going to keep. I've told you to watch my videos, okay? On my channel page, there's update videos. They explain the basics of the theory. I've already explained atomic clocks now. I did it right in this video for you. I'll give you a timeout. I mean, you're obviously retarded. I've explained to you the clocks are broken. There is no time bent. Clocks don't work when you accelerate them. You move them fast, the clock doesn't tell the right time. Nothing else changed. The clock is broken. Shit. When has velocity ever changed? And where did you prove velocity ever changes? Bending isn't changing velocity, so that doesn't even make sense. I said trajectory has changed. Trajectory is never changed by another force. You can't change the trajectory of a photon with a force. Can't be done. Whatever. There's no evidence that takes place, is my point. The evidence is weak. The Eddington experiment is rubbish. The galactic lensing images are mathematically insane. No, gravity can't change the trajectory of gravity. Gravity can't change the trajectory of magnetism. Gravity can't change the trajectory of a photon. Forces can't affect forces. You can't move a photon with a magnet. You can't move a photon with other photons. Why can you do it with a graviton? If I can't move light with a laser beam, I can't shoot a laser beam at another laser beam and change the light, can I? We all know I can't do that. I can't push the light bulb. I can't shoot the laser at the light bulb and make the light bend, right? Same difference. Just like this laser beam can't bend another laser beam, gravity can't bend this light either. Eddington lensing, that was what was being talked about last evening. That was what was being talked about in the first half of this video. I didn't fully understand what was being talked about, but now I think I see at least what the subject was. Subject was the evidence that photons are affected by gravity is insanely, considering the fact that just last year they had a perfect eclipse and didn't redo the experiment, is insanely weak. The gravitational lens, as I have pointed out, is the wrong shape. It can't magnify anything. Oh, somebody did ask in my writing what UAPF means. Yes, that's universal active particle force. So gravity, light, magnetism, and the nuclear forces are all manifestations, different manifestations of the one force, which is the universal active particle force, which is just a bunch of the cosmic background radiation in a form where it isn't at a frequency. and it has two polarizations, plus and minus. Oh, here we go again. Totally off subject. I came across Draft Science over a year ago and used to watch it a good bit. Not live, though. But what does the draft part mean? Well, it means that 7 years ago, I had a draft physics theory that I was proposing that, yes, the gravity is a real force, a real active particle force, not bent space. and then, and so that's what I was proposing, that it explains that Mach gravity or Lesage gravity perfectly explains gravity, and it's perfectly sensible. And then I, over time, evolved that explanation to have more and more character. I explained time dilation, and I explained magnetism and charge, and so it became a unification theory shortly thereafter. But it's clearly in a draft form in that it's one man working on it for 7 years. They've had 100 years to make rationalizations and bullshit stories up for their silly nonsense. So obviously mine's still in the draft form. This is this is Einstein paper in 1905, not in 1915. But it's so much better in terms of the improvements made than the improvements made to Einstein's papers. So clearly, in my opinion, this is a rather complete and substantial draft proposal. I like seeing time as a function, yes. So if I would guess, question mark. That's not a question. So if I would guess, question mark. There's no reason for a question mark there. You would say that there is no time dilation. I've said it as clearly as I can say it. Time isn't anything. You can't affect it. Photons move from point A to point B at a constant speed, and you can never take that and change it. The photon never takes longer, it never takes shorter, the distance never gets longer, the distance never gets shorter. I mean, distance is distance, time is time. They're constants, and if you deliberately change them, then you deliberately change them, but you have to change them. And if you don't change them, they don't change. So clearly, you can't bend time. It's not a dimension. You can't warp it. You can't adjust it. You can't do anything to it because time is what photons take to go distance. And they always take the same amount of time to move the same amount of distance. So there is no time that can be affected by anything. All you can do is break measuring devices. That's what they call time dilation, is when you've broken a measuring device, they say time dilation. That's another word for the clock be broken. I never felt right about it. And that's time dilation is just a facet of it being a function. Again, there's no time dilation. There's just broken measuring devices. I'm 50, but when I was 18 or so, I simply thought one day that time. I simply thought one day that time, at a year interval seems to simply be a means to measure spatial phenomena. It all ties to having a constant. So you could simply argue that obviously the orbit of the Earth is fairly constant. There's things that are quite reliable. There's other clocks besides photons that are quite reliable, that aren't broken, you know, that aren't easily broken. But yes, humans are easily broken. So go ahead and accelerate a human half the speed of light, and I'll wager some money they're not going to be doing normal human things unless you think bloody diarrhea is normal. That is why I agree. Yeah, as you just said, time is not anything. Hollywood sure loves the idea, but the grandfather paradox in physics, all of that solved once you throw time out the window. Well, clearly they have rationalizations for all kinds of paradoxes, but the very fact that they concede that maybe in multiple frames it would be possible to change the order of events where you could actually witness your own birth, clearly that's pretty retarded. Stuffed time dilation theory, whatever. You don't have to agree with me on time dilation. Well, it doesn't matter. I obviously don't have, I already know I don't have to. I don't need you to tell me. Why would I agree with anyone who disagrees? I mean, anyone who thinks time is something, I think you're being irrational because there isn't any evidence of any time being warped anywhere. There's just evidence of clocks not working very well. There are no constants. You're still on this constants issue. It's just so retarded. Fuck you. I don't know what to say. I mean, it's just such a waste of time to do this pretending. Clearly, there'd be implications to changing the speed and distance equations. All the atoms would fall apart, everything would break. Nothing could possibly work without that reliable speed of photons. The photons are creating all the pressure in the atoms, and the only thing holding the atoms together is an insane precision of timing. And if that timing is broken, it's done, it's over. I just used A and A to follow it, but just laughing. I am not adverse to dropping my fear of constants. I'm just not real. I don't want to spend the rest of my evening, whatever, giving you anal therapy on constant fear. It's just, I really don't. It's not to me. It's like talking religion or something. I mean, what do you want to go through all the evidence of the constants and explain to you why there's so many elements of reality that are so fucking reliable? I mean, damn. I don't really want to do that. It's like talking to a flat earther. I'm going to make you a shirt that says velocity breaks clocks. Well, that doesn't say it. That doesn't say anything funny enough. I mean, it doesn't say it. It doesn't say it the way it needs to be said for people to understand what the fuck is written on my shirt. I mean, if I put that on a shirt, people aren't going to understand it, and I'll have to explain it to them. I'd rather you just make me a shirt with humans are fucking cunts. I said you don't have to argue with me. Well, you just keep posting comments, making your snide remarks about constants. There are no constants. You just keep dragging the subject up. God. Oh, you don't have to argue with me. I'm just going to keep fucking poking you with this. The earth is flat. The earth is flat. The earth is flat. Jesus is God. Jesus is God. Fuck you. If you read it as you don't have to agree, I'm just, you keep bringing it up. Fuck. Can you explain the atomic clock thing? You don't understand that the decay of an atom is by a process. They don't just spontaneously decay. Each atom has an age. Each atom came from a different sun. So each atom in some kind of decaying substance is decaying by a process. And so when you put the atoms together, you have an average decay rate, which is basically saying the average age of the atoms or something, right? So a certain number of them will decay every second on average, right? But the decay process is happening for a reason. So when you give the frickin' atom, right? So let's just say the decay rate just has to do with how fast force moves through the electrons in a spiral, let's just say. I don't think it's a spiral. I think it's back and forth, but it doesn't matter. So there's a system, and this is 12 o'clock, and it goes to 12 o'clock. It goes to 12 o'clock. Now you can understand now, if I move this thing, this clock, that's going to 12 o'clock, if I move it in any direction, the circle becomes larger, right? Because now it's an elongated circle. So no matter what direction I move it in, I've elongated the circle. So now the circumference of the circle is longer. That means it takes the thing moving the speed of light more time to go around it because it's a bigger track. So it doesn't get to 12 o'clock in the same amount of time. It comes up a little short. So you get it comes up a little short of 12. So each time it goes around, it's coming up a little short, a little short, a little short. That's the time breaking of the atoms. So in the atomic clock, you're retarding the decay rate of the atoms because the atoms can't do what they usually do, get to 12 o'clock in exactly the same time. They can't do that anymore because they have to go more distance through space. If I'm dancing as fast as I can in one place, my feet are going up and down as fast as I can, and then somebody says, move to your left. Can you understand that my feet can't move up and down as fast because I have to take some time out to make my foot go left? And then I have to move the other foot left. You get it? That time taken away from going up and down means I can't go up and down as fast. I can't dance as fast. All right. I've explained this. I mean, it's got to be at least 100 times now. At least 100. I put you in a timeout before for being an obnoxious jackass who will not do any research on this channel. There's 900 and whatever, 78 videos, and you will not do any research on your own. You just want me to personally tutor you. I mean, you're being very unfair to the rest of the audience. Okay, I'll work on that line. Funny as hell, though. Well, whatever. Hey, I never said Earth is flat. Again, the metaphor fits. I'm just saying you're just. I've pointed out how I think it's an obnoxiously stupid theory that constants aren't constant. It's as silly to me as flat Earth or Jesus. It's a waste of time. There's no evidence of the constants being broken. There's no reason to investigate this murder because there's no fucking murder. There's no body. There's no blood. There's no evidence the murder ever took place. And you're saying, I'm suspicious there's a murder. I'm saying, no, I'm not. I have no interest in finding the murder for which there's no evidence that it happened. That's like a conspiracy theory. It's a waste of neurons. Oh, don't put words in my mouth. Oh, you're just too pathetic. You're the one that keeps bringing it up and then attack me on something I didn't say. I mean, I just didn't do that. I pointed out how you just keep bringing this subject up that I told you I have no interest in. And you just keep harassing me with it. You keep typing, I love Jesus on my message board, and you're saying, don't be irritated. Fuck you. I'll be irritated. I've addressed your stupid point. That's it. I'm done with it. You want to keep bringing up the word constant? Then I'll just block you. Okay? Jesus. I'm not referring to that mention of flat Earth. I never mentioned it. But you did, and then carried on as if I did. I made an analogy, you fucking idiot. I analogized your behavior to an obnoxious Christian or an obnoxious flat earther who just keeps saying stupid shit. That's stupid. I love challenges. So you're really just looking to push another button, aren't you? Just keep trying to push the button, fucker. That's okay on the time out. Yes, that's something else you need. 192 videos. What are you talking about? There's 900 and something videos on this channel. 992. I wasn't talking to you. I wasn't telling you to watch the videos. I was telling the person who keeps bringing up subjects that I have repeatedly explained. I understand your request to watch more and be more prepared. I wasn't talking to you. I was talking to FO sociology. What if you're dancing in an airplane? Totally irrelevant. Aren't you still moving at the right to the right while dancing at the same rate as if the plane weren't moving? Clearly, you have to recognize that motion that you have to create versus motion that the ground is creating for you, that some other mechanism is creating. The argument is the atom has to move. It doesn't get to move for free. Something has to move it. It has to move in space. And it's that movement that changes the distance of the orbits of the objects around it. I'm just saying, if you can think of it logically, if I move the whole solar system in a direction, you won't see the change, but you would see it in terms of how long it would take for the objects to reach their orbit points. How to put it? If I stop the solar system and I move the solar system, you'll see the difference in the time it takes for the orbits to be completed if the objects have to move at the same speed. So if you have a constant speed, there's no way to get around the fact that the Earth has to travel a longer distance. Jesus. Moving the floor, okay, and your body at the same speed doesn't analogize to what happens when an atom has to be moved. Maybe the way to put it is the difference between acceleration and velocity. Acquiring motion is when you're creating time dilation. But when you have velocity as a piece of matter, You only have it because you've captured force in a direction. So you're accelerating. It's like when we're getting accelerated by gravity. At any one moment, some of my atoms are moving down and some of my atoms are being pushed by the ground back up. So at any one moment, my force potential, some pieces are moving one way, some pieces are moving the other way. And so you can sort of understand that some are taking big old spirals in this direction while others are taking spirals in the other direction. Let's see how else to put that. At any one moment, I'm not moving a velocity. Some of my bits are accelerating in a direction and some bits are accelerating in another direction. They're never moving a velocity. They're accelerating. They're changing their speed, not moving at a speed. All right, that's probably the way to put it. Agreed. I do not want you to have to explain to me what you already have in prior videos. All good. And I will. So again, you keep responding as if I was talking to you when I was talking to FO sociology guy. But regardless, my gripe with you is if you bring up constants again, I'm going to block you. So I'm just giving you fair warning. I've explained all I have to say on the subject of constants. I don't see any evidence to doubt them. I see no reason to doubt them. And I will not constantly engage in some conversation about why I think it's a perfectly rational and sensible thing to acknowledge the existence of constants. All right, superior mind. No, the person dancing in the airplane will technically be dancing slower. All right. You have to explain why that technical truth is true. Slower than a person on the ground, slower to something not moving. Again, it's always got to relate it all to the motion outside of the other elements changing the external environment. Oh, I don't know how to say it. I mean, you're not going to be able to answer his question by saying no. The person dancing in the airplane will technically be dancing slower because that's not going to be enough of an answer. I wonder if there is a delay on when chat appears to you. I'm sure there is. Who cares? Probably not terribly significant. I just heard your response to 21 a.m. Well, I'm not really interested. 2:22:03 is when I read your comment, so it's 30 seconds or so. I'm Pennsylvania. It doesn't matter where you're located, I don't think. Explaining it is the tricky part. It's not complex, but for some reason people hit a mind block or something. You just have to think of distance as always being opposing something. So I'm just saying the simplest analogy I can give is this up and down thing, right? I mean, you can sort of understand that if something's moving up and down and I move it in some other dimension, that the up and down is now can't be the same short line. It can't be just up and down. It's now moving some other way. And the some other way is lengthening the travel time for this piece here. It moves more distance. And more distance at the same speed means something changes. Okay? You can't have the same up. The same number of ups can't happen in the same amount of time because it takes longer for the up to get to up. Yeah, well, whatever. I mean, you can only put it into so much baby talk, and then you have to just say, that's as simple as I can make it. There might be a simple fish explanation. I just have to think about it. Why do I intuit you live in Vermont? I don't know what that means. I live in Vermont. I don't know why. I live in New Jersey. Not my business, but are you East Coast? Yes. I thought your explanation was pretty good. Okay, 30 seconds. That answer that. Yes. I'm Pacific Standard. Yes, well, it's all very interesting. I'm in. Do you have an innie belly button or an outie belly button? Yeah. No, it doesn't. But damn, if you were my neighbor, before you probably said it, Tim, only visit once a week. I'd always be seeking to hang out, lol. Yeah, well, I don't know. I burn them out. Yeah, well, whatever. Whatever. I just don't need people. I mean, I just hate to say that, but I really don't have any use for them. Moving along longer distances to do the same thing. Moving along longer distance to do the same thing. Yes, that's a good way to say it. I mean, it's just that that's not enough for imbeciles. My secret to intellectual growth. Well, first you have to know what up and down is. You have to know what direction growth is. I call intellectual humility. It's my willingness to say I was wrong. I see where I was wrong. Now I can move on. Yeah, I did a lot of that as a kid. I could argue, but yeah, once I got to a certain point, I said, yeah, no, it's really easy to figure out. There's no God. Everybody's a selfish cunt. They're all lying bastards, and blah blah. You figure it all out. By the way, totally off topic. I learned recently that one day on Venus is longer than 1 year. Well, Venus has a very its orbit's really fucked up. They say that Venus got hit and its poles got reversed, and so its rotation is like Mercury. Well, no, Mercury rotates twice a year. Um, rotates once every two rotations around the sun. So it's pretty slow. But yeah, Venus is really slow. It spins really slow. But like I said, I'm not too sure if this thing happened where it got its poles reversed. It spins the wrong way, but obviously it rotates the wrong way. I mean, it's all the other planets rotate counterclockwise, and Venus rotates clockwise. So they say the reason why it does that is because it got flipped upside down. So it was spinning the right way and it got twisted. And by being twisted, now it's anti. And so it's torquing against the system, so to speak. And by torquing against the system, its rotation is slowed down. I would argue that's the consequence. So eventually it might stop rotating altogether. I mean, that would be, in my opinion, a rational surmise might be that eventually Venus will be like the moon, and it'll always have the same face at the sun. So the way I see things is because of Venus, it breaks our temporal model. I don't know. Whatever you want. You're doing it again, right? Isn't this what you're doing? I don't know what you're doing again. You're getting back to some sort of crap, that there's some broken constant model or something. No, Venus is broken. The model isn't broken. Venus is broken. There is no or down in space. Silly. I mean, you're just asking for it. I don't know. I know you said not to post colon parentheses, but habit. I don't know what that even means either. What I told you is to stop making veiled references to your bullshit problem with constants. Hey Gary, I'll say this: your skepticism on humanity. Well, that's not the subject, so I don't want to do that again. I just turned 50, and I am starting to realize there's a lot of crap out there that needs to be bypassed. There's a lot of crap that needs to be stepped on. My point on Venus was simply that if one day is longer than a year, as it is on Venus, then this breaks our model of time. I just don't want to play a silly baby word game. Venus is not broken. Venus is real. Model is abstract. Well, whatever. There's nothing wrong with the model. Fuck you. Guess I'll give you a timeout. See if anybody else has anything rational to say. I mean, it's just so stupid. I mean, the moon's been traveling around the sun, the same cycle for millions of years. The Earth around the sun, millions of years. This asshole says there's something wrong with the model. I mean, just fucking goddamn asshole. They're very good clocks. I'd say the Earth is a better clock than the best atomic clock we have. Damn good clock. Fucking assholes. All right, so 1 minute warning and such. Yeah, Venus. I don't know what that was about. Yeah. He has an obsession. He doesn't think there's any constants in the universe. He wants to believe in some sort of fairy bullshit that somehow the universe is doing some invariant thing somewhere, that these basic functions don't really take place or something. I don't know what his bullshit is. Somehow the checkerboard randomly works. Even though, as I pointed out, there's not a single shred of evidence. This is bizarre how, that's the other thing, about people is, you can find somebody that you have 99% agreement with, and they'll have one preposterously obnoxious habit or belief or something, and it'll just ruin it. It'll just be like, nails on chalkboard, and you just be like, oh, you got a beautiful ass and perfect tits, but I just I can't stand that way you blink your eye. Oh, it's funny. I speculate that some constants may emerge due to equilibrium of some sort. Well, obviously, some of the constants are just byproducts of the underlying consistency of the mechanism. So again, it's just, I don't even know why I have to have this argument. You people really think that if so, look, I'm arguing the universe is a checkerboard. There's two kinds of checkers, two kinds of squares. The squares are all square. They're all the same size square. The checkers are all round, all the same size, all the same weight. There's no reason that anything farts out crooked or bent. And if there's any variation, it's completely irrelevant to function. The dominoes fall, it hits the other domino, the domino falls, it hits the other domino, the domino falls. The dominoes never don't fall. They're consistent in their function. There's absolutely no reason to worry about any of this shit. The underlying function is simple, reliable, consistent, and that's demonstrated by the fact that we can sit here for even 10 minutes in a universe that it doesn't just blow up. Because it would blow up if there wasn't consistent. I mean, the Earth is a reliable clock because the pressure created by gravity is a reliable energy source that keeps the sun in its exact equilibrium. True that. The rules need stability or no universe. Yes, the whole thing is an incredibly nuanced tower of cards. It's a gigantic house of cards. The complexity, every atom has been built inside of a pressure chamber, and they're all shaped to to stay in their shape. And every bit of magnetism and every tug and every pull has to be perfect, or the whole thing falls apart. And it's just, it just can't work unless it's insanely consistent. I mean, a photon travels billions of light years across space, and the consistency of its frequency and the consistency of its function is so reliable, even over that insane amount of space. And yes, the redshift thing happens for the reasons I've given, but it's incredibly consistent. I mean, effectively, the universe never makes a misstep. It just never. There's no error except in its creation. The mechanism that created the universe is broken, but the universe is a precision instrument. Even though it's making shit, it makes it perfectly. I mean, I did put that Tim guy in a timeout, right? It wasn't like I blocked him. It's weird. It says message deleted. I didn't delete it. Let's see what it exactly says. Yeah, it doesn't say that I put him in a timeout. Weird. Let's go check. Just for fun. I go to channel. What do I have to hit? Report user. I don't think that's it, but I'll hit it just in case that's what you hit. Yeah, so he's not blocked. So yeah. Yeah, it's weird. I didn't think a timeout meant you just delete all the messages. I thought it just meant you'd stop the guy from commenting for a while. Kind of weird. Guess I won't use that anymore. But anyway, all right. Let's see. Okay, no universe, so nothing new. All right, 30-second warning or something. Oh yeah, it says here was timed out by Draft Science for 300 seconds. 300 seconds is 10 minutes? No, 5 minutes. Okay. It's been 5 seconds. It's been 5 minutes yet. I don't know. It's pretty close to 5 minutes, right? I mean, I give him a chance to have his last word. Yeah, well, the first hour was two was pretty good, and then annoying people started being annoying. I don't know. I just did my job. The stupid, mindless marbles guy, whoever the fuck it was doing his usual routine of apologizing. The apologetics for bad physics. Kept trying to put words in my mouth that I never said. How many people were there tonight? I guess I didn't see that. Probably a better place to look than on these pages. See how many people. Yeah, 14. No, it's pretty much average. Do need to expand the audience. Ah, yes, spending space it's still something they believe in. Yes, spending nothing and having nothing tell something what to do. Not very rational. Tim probably got upset and left. Well, I gave him fair warning. I mean, I really did. I mean, I just am not going to waste all my time talking about how the constants are broken in the universe. It's just not a reasonable subject. I don't know what the agenda is, frankly. It's a weird thing, right? But you got to say, why is he so uncomfortable with the constants? Why? What's the reason? I mean, you see it so many places in our lives that, like Old Faithful. So he goes up to Old Faithful and he says, I don't trust you. So the thing's been doing the same thing for 1,000 years. I don't trust you. You're up to something. You're just pretending to do this constant thing, but you're not going to do it. Like any moment now, you're going to be inconstant. You're going to fill up with water at a faster rate for no reason. I mean, clearly, Old Faithful has changed its period over time. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying geysers are good clocks. I'm just saying that from a person's personal perspective, it's a damn good clock. It doesn't change from Tuesday to Wednesday. I end up doing exactly what I said I didn't want to do, which is provide the 7 million pieces of evidence demonstrating how the big giant things are hugely consistent, and they're only consistent because the little things are consistent. I only pointed out that the small universe is the only universe, and it's the universe that makes the big things. And if the big things are doing something consistently, they can only do it consistently because the little things are being consistent. Damn. That reminds me, I did hear there's some sort of super volcano under Yellowstone. Well, it's getting fat. It's Yellowstone is rising. So it's doing the bulging thing, like there's magma and it's getting hot. So they have noticed a temperature increase. So there is speculation that it's the next volcano that's just going to go. And when it goes, it's not going to be like one of those little poofy volcanoes. It's going to be bang, big. So what you drinking? I'm just drinking flavored water tonight. Got a little caffeine in it. Just some sort of cheap powdered crap. All right, first, last, I didn't leave. I was cleaning the kitchen. Well, you have a great life. Yeah. I only do that once every 4 or 5 months, maybe. People keep forgetting that these small things don't follow the same rules and keep crying about friction and such. No, I don't know about that, but the point is there's no consistency in the big universe without consistency in the small universe. That's the point. Made the point. Shouldn't have to remake the point. Yeah, I'm not far from Yellowstone. Hmm. Yeah, then you ought to be really, you ought to keep aware because, like I said, it is a real thing. It's not like it's a fake thing. Um, it's, I'm not saying it's going to happen in the next 500 years. I'm just saying there's indications that it's accelerating. And I don't know at what rate it needs to accelerate to become a real threat. But I'm just saying from the tangential information I have received does seem a little ominous. I mean, when the ground is rising, that's a little bit ominous. Well, this is that filth mouth. I don't know what that means either, but whatever. Yellowstone is a spectacularly nice place. I mean, it's just an interesting fucking place. I mean, if you like nature, of course. I don't even know how to say it. Like, if you like nature, I mean, it's just, I saw things at Yellowstone that they're just like perfect National Geographic kind of images. I mean, fishing in the stream and there's bears on the other side, and then fishing in the lake, and there was a moose on a sandbar as the sun was setting behind it. I mean, just spectacular shit. Then at the sulfur pits, even though you couldn't breathe, there was a buffalo on the edge of an outcropping of rock. Just perfect crap like that. You don't realize how big buffalo are until you're near one of them. They're fucking huge. But anyway, Venus breaks. Oh, here he's doing it again. I just don't know what to say. There's no point. It doesn't break any model. I've explained why it is what it is. There's explanations. You don't want to pay any attention to the explanation. It's not a reflection of its natural condition. It's not a reflection of the model. It's a reflection of a disruption of the model, breaking the model. You retard. Old Faithful is a super geyser. I don't think it's the super geyser is the one that goes off every 10,000 years. That's the super geyser. Yeah, that's ominous, all right. I don't know what that means. Even though Teddy Roosevelt did want to wipe out all Asians and was a racist and all hell, he did protect Yellowstone. Trump wants to open them up to drilling. Well, obviously, Trump's a ignorant cunt. The dumbest man ever elected president for sure. Yeah, there's great land and sites around there. Yeah, it's too bad it burns down a little bit too often. But I just mean the things you see, right? I mean, you have the swamps, you have hot springs, you have the geysers, you have the sulfur pits, you have rocky mountains, you have plains, you have every kind of geological formation all in one place. And it's like, if you're in a flat mood, you got flat places. You want a 200-foot waterfall, there's a 200-foot waterfall. I mean, there's just about anything you want is there. I mean, it's just got like every kind of environment in one place. Wet, dry, hot, cold, it's all there. Just like 5 miles in a different direction and you're in a different freaking world. My friend's buffalo destroyed a crop car and threw it off the road. Yeah, well, I'm just, it'd be pretty cool to have a pet buffalo, but yes, They are big. That's all I'm saying. They're just damn big. I mean, I was thinking like cow, and they're not like a cow. You know, they're big. I mean, I guess the males is better. You know, they're just a full male buffalo thing. It's like 2 tons or something. It's big. Maybe it's just a lot of hair, but it's damn big. It escaped. Yes, of course it did. Escaped. Just imagine the liability. Yeah, my buffalo's loose. Yeah. How much is this going to cost me? I'm just saying, as a kid, it was I spent whatever 10 days in Yellowstone. It was just you know. After that, we went to the redwood forest. So that was really, I mean, it's just that kind of stuff. Just the whole redwood thing was kind of amazing too. I mean, you really don't get it until you're there. Until you're standing, looking up. You just don't get how fucking big the fucking trees are. I mean, they're insanely big. What's your take on the size of the universe? Yeah, the universe is big too, insanely big. It's not until you really look at it do you realize, it's fucking big. Well, I think the universe does have some finite elements. I think it is evolving. I think it is getting heavier. I think it does its energy profile. It does succumb to cycles of hot and cold. So it gets hot and then it gets cold and then it gets hot and then it gets cold. And I haven't seen any, I don't have any great opinion, but I don't think it is sizeless. That's cool. I'm visiting Yellowstone as a child. I'd like to get here someday. I went everywhere when I was a kid, and I go nowhere now. I think it's too big to tell, so how can we know yet? I think you can know based on the existence of, say, quasars. Obviously, galaxies were in a different form 13 billion years ago. There's no quasars anywhere in the local universe, right? There's none close to us, right? So clearly, I think galaxies are degrading, they're falling apart. Uh, well, my question about the universe is, do you support its finite or infinite? I think the word infinite is useless, so I guess I'm a finite person. I read Aristotle, thought it was always been here, always will. I figure you say something eternal. I didn't say the universe wasn't eternal. I'm saying I don't think it's of infinite size. Um, and by eternal, I mean it lives and dies, and then lives and dies, and lives and dies. It just grows back. It's like a plant. Dies, and grows back, and dies, and grows back. And since Einstein bound time to space, then any time you say eternal, you also say space. Well, I don't say any of that stuff. I don't go by Einstein's rules, quite obviously. So, again, I find it an incredibly uninteresting subject. I'm sorry that you're interested in things I'm totally uninterested in. I give no fucking shit how eternal or massive or anything the universe is. It to me is useless information. Means absolutely nothing to me. A billion stars versus a trillion stars versus a gazillion stars, I just couldn't care the fuck less. I read all the I read all the photons as visible light drop into infrared at 14 billion years. Yes, then that would mean that all the ultraviolet light drops into visible light. Ha ha. So, no kidding, we can see that far, which is why I await the James Webb Telescope. La 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 la. I, as stated, couldn't care any less than I don't care. Absolutely, totally uninteresting information. Well, my only argument for a wall is the fact that gravity is persistent. And in theory, the only way gravity can be persistent is all the photons leaving the universe have to come back as gravity. Something has to come back. The universe would get cold fairly quickly if all the energy goes out and none of it comes back in. I was just curious, Gary, if you thought the universe is never ending, unlimited. I just don't care. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. They claim they can see another universe. LOL. I don't think anyone called a reasonable they claim that. Also, I agree with your redshift theory that visible light drops into infrared due to interference. I don't believe in interference, so it's the wrong word to use. So I don't go along with any of that. It doesn't have to do with dropping infrared, it has to do with shifting the spectral lines of all the frequencies of radiation. All frequencies of radiation are shifted by the consequence of colliding with moving atoms. All right. It's too unanswerable for us yo care about now, I guess. That means so I won't even waste too many neurons. All right, superior mind. In my world, there can be one universe, alas, the concept universe, or whatever. I also run with people, prattle on about multiverse. I also run. Well, you're prattling pretty much about the same kind of who cares. How does it change anything meaningful? Um, who claims that? Yes, it was kind of an ambiguous claim. Nihilism, not caring. Oh, fuck you. I'm not a nihilist. I care about things that matter and I don't care about things that don't matter. I'm saying it makes no difference. Trillion stars, gazillion stars, makes no difference. It was in the news article recently. Whatever. I'll have to look it up. I'm just saying, obviously, it's not news by like lots of stuff is in the news that isn't news. No one claims they've seen the multiverse or whatever. Okay. I swear sometimes it's just, I know this whole, it always does this. People always start talking about creation and multiverses and bullshit. I don't understand any of that fascination at all. Just, I can't for the life of me understand why people are fascinated by questions that can't be answered, clearly, and that have just can't possibly mean anything. If you Google another universe found, well, I'm sure it's a crap story, so whatever. based on crap evidence and crap theory. So, George Crap. I don't care about multiverse or creationism. I'm just saying it's subject leads there. I don't take it there. I was careful not to prattle on about that. I truly could care less about these two. Yes, good. Just saying the subject's always in you. I mean, you did raise the questions. I think you're the one who asked these. Do you think the universe is eternal, or do you think it's a runaway train, or do you think it's a duck with one leg, or do you think it's a cockroach with four anuses? I did bring up the subject. Yes, that's right. Well, at least you got that one right. So anyway, it is getting late, insanely late. Time has worn me down, and well, it wasn't the time; it was the banging. But anyway, so till the next time, when we will once again, well, I once again will attempt to keep the subject on the subject. Yeah, that's what I'll attempt to do. But yeah, it didn't seem confirmed. Yeah, it doesn't seem confirmed. Yeah, I was surprised. Was just, I wonder what the margin of error was. Yeah, 7,643% margin of error. I was just about to get to something. Yeah, I'm sure you were. But anyway, good night and such, and so forth and whatnot. And yeah, that's enough. That's enough. I'm done. Okay, till next time. Thanks. Sort of. Kind of. Maybe.